I feel like I have been passionately engaged in the topic of future work for 20 years. Back then, I was a bright young MBA coming out of business school, and my very first project was helping Merrill Lynch go online. That was 1996. Today, you've grown up with the internet. 3.5 billion people are on it. You recognize kind of the power of what that tool can bring. In those days, it was a fad. Internet, schminternet. My kids play games on that. And my job was to get the 25,000 financial advisors of Merrill Lynch excited about the internet, excited about how that tool could transform their jobs, their work, their workplace, and to some extent, their workforce. And they were skeptics. It was not easy. I had to lean in and help them understand that the largest portion of the folks on the internet after sort of the millennials of those days was the retirees. They were at home. They were poking around on the net. They were excited by it. And those retirees were the customers of the Merrill Lynch financial advisor. And so therein began my journey around looking at the complexity of the workplace and how technology is transforming it. So why is it different today? Why does this topic capture our collective imagination so strongly? And often, why is the dialogue one of doom and job loss? I would argue that we need to pay attention to the job transition dimensions of what's happening. But in the world of abundance, there are many other trends to consider. These are 15 jobs that didn't exist 15 years ago. And you can probably remember back to 2003, and you can remember what it felt like. But the widespread adoption of the internet, smartphones, big data, cloud computing, right? It has fundamentally transformed how we think of the world as consumers, but it has also transformed the workplace and created a new world of job opportunities. John just talked about cowboys and drones. Drone racing is a $50 million market globally for X Games and ESPN. The top 3 drone racers live in Fort Collins, Colorado, and their world is one of like tinkering and computing and coding. We have already begun to see what drones can do in the world across multiple dimensions. You've all seen the YouTube video of the drone dropping a buoy to 2 kids caught in a rip current outside of Sydney. It's transforming work. Do your kids play with drones? Encourage that, right? We've found through a study that Deloitte UK did that in the United Kingdom, between 2001 and 2015, technology contributed to the loss of about 800,000 jobs. But during the same period, it contributed to the growth of about 3.5 million new jobs. And those jobs were higher paying, at about £10,000 per annum, which contributed about 140 billion to the UK economy through increased wages. So there's definitely this dialogue around job loss and transition and job growth. And it's a huge challenge for organizations. And how are they grappling with it? Well, let's take a look at some numbers. 44, 70. 4 out of 10 companies believe that automation will significantly impact jobs. 44% believe that face-to-face meetings will decrease in the future. And a full 70% believe they need a different mix of talent for the future. Not a very compelling picture. What are they doing about it? 17, 47, 54. Only 17% of the executives that we studied report they're ready to manage a workforce of bots and humans and AIs working in collaboration. 17%. 47% are concerned that they're not getting the increased productivity out of all these collaboration tools that are coming online. And 54%, over half, have done nothing to think about the reskilling of their workforce, even though they see they need that different mix of talent. So there's a gap. a gap between the future that organizations are seeing and the actions that they're starting to take. And I'm going to spend time today diving into some of what's actually happening. So before I go any further, where's this data coming from? So at Deloitte, we've done a series of studies across many years around major trends that are happening in the world of human capital. This last study was done this year in 2018, had 11,000 respondents, 124 countries. It was our largest study yet to date. And you can see on the slide before me all of the different industries that are represented, the levels of folks represented, the different countries that responded. And so much of the information that we're talking about comes from this study. And it turned out that it had some very surprising trends. So no question, change is upon us. And as members of the Singularity community, I don't need to explain to you about exponential technology and what's happening. But underneath that, individuals are keeping up. Now, we can debate. The singularity is coming, 2047, still a bit further ahead. But for now, individuals, we like our mobile phones. We like the convenience of digital and mobile. We like Alexa. She's fun. She gets our music. She gets our recipes. The kids play with her, right? She changes our lights. And we think to ourselves, I want that in the workplace. And long has consumer-grade technology driven businesses to adapt their work environments to be more accommodating to what their workforces want. And so as we think about wanting Alexa to do our emails, well, companies are stepping up to that. Marriott's already declared that she will soon be in their hotel rooms, and JP Morgan Chase put Alexa on the trading floor 2 months ago. And so as businesses strive to keep up with these technologies, alas, what we see, of course, is public policy lagging further behind. Public policy is struggling to make sense of these changes and to step into the questions that it means around communities and around countries as far as what to do in terms of workforce development, what to do around education. And what's interesting about these processes is that they start to put interesting forces on the business community. So what we're starting to see in the trend, and it was already cited a little bit by Will Wiseman in the early days of opening the conference, right? The power of the individual has increased. And the individuals are now driving sort of a view of what they want to see in the workplace and what they expect from the businesses they work for. So we did another study with MIT, 2017. A full 86% of the millennials in that study cited that they believe that organizations need to be held accountable for greater than just financial performance. And a full 82% felt that organizations need to be involved in the same concerns that they have personally. So social impact, philanthropy, and charity. And you've already seen the power of the individual in terms of what it starts to create in the marketplace. So Parkland, sad as that was, created a huge groundswell that many businesses responded to, one of which that was most interesting to me was Dick's Sporting Goods. They decided to take guns off their shelves. And they discovered in the process that they tapped into the desires of the soccer mom community that was actually a major consumer base for them. And they did better for it. And so more businesses are looking at sort of what's taking place in terms of this lag, and they're beginning to address that in their own actions. An entire set of companies, Google, Apple, Facebook, Burton's Snowboards, Campbell's Soup, Timberland, and others, agreed that they would stay in the Paris Accords even as the US departed them. And you've all read news in the Times and other organizations about Google's employees and how they've cited their discontent with Google and some of the things it was considering doing with the Department of Defense, or in terms of developing search engines that had sensor abilities for China, and how they moved out of doing some of those things. And so what we're starting to see is businesses responding to the gap that exists within the social sphere, and individuals pushing businesses to do so. And if you think about the emerging story around jobs and job loss, think about this trend. So how did we get here? The chairman of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, declared 2 years ago that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. And you can see through the first, second, and third industrial revolution and what you've learned from history, sort of what that means in terms of the migration from agrarian to a more manufacturing economy, the migration to the production line and mass production and assembly, the migration into a more computer-oriented digital world, and then finally into a fourth industrial revolution where we're talking about cyber and physical coming together. And you can surmise the sorts of disruption and trend that this had around workforces. Clearly, our educational system is geared to the second industrial revolution and the production line, and that force needs to shift. And what you're seeing, of course, is the increased complexity. So it's not just about the AI replacing a certain portion of what someone does. It's actually about the AI and the bot and the drone with Internet of Things and the crowd fully coming together to upend supply chains. And that complexity is hard to grasp. But the scale of it is going to be massive. 100 billion connected things by 2025, contributing 10 trillion to the global economy. And in terms of automation and AI, the prediction is 16 trillion by 2030. So with that massive scale, what are we expecting to see around job growth? So already, there are 10,000 AI specialists in the world, and that's not going to meet the need. And you can see data such as 250,000 data scientists will be needed in the US by 2024, 250,000. And a gap around cybersecurity globally. The Cybersecurity Trade Association says that by 2022, they'll have a gap of 1.8 million jobs in the world of cyber. So there's already sort of an increasing view of the demand for different types of skills and jobs. And you can see the growth. They're expecting technology experts to grow to 50 million new jobs by 2030. And with that, we would expect a different demand on the managerial class and on executives. And here's a number about the projected growth for India. But as John has pointed out, it's not just about these larger, higher order skills. It's also about that as the bots and as the AI tools start to do more of the production work, it unleashes the ability for us to step into what I think of as more enduring human skills. So the complex systems thinking, the creativity, the imagination, the navigation of the politics of an organization, listening, communication. And so we're also anticipating a rise in certain domains that have to do with creating a human experience, something that likely a bot or AI, even with the wealth of singularity and its predictions, may not yet get to in the immediate future. And so there, we're expecting creatives and the demand on them to grow in China and India, and care providers, 5 million new jobs in the US, growth in India of about 142% over that time. And so, as you see, there's going to be this gap in terms of what's created in terms of jobs, and what are organizations about to do to step into some of solving for that. And so we've begun to posit that there are going to be some very interesting changes to work, but in addition, changes to the workplace and changes to the workforce. And as John has been speaking about learning, and that is a fundamental trend to watch, the nature of reinvention, I would like to look at 3 other trends from our report that I think give a little bit of insight into what organizations are starting to do. 1, the longevity dividend. 2, the hyper-connected workplace. And 3, the workforce as a vast ecosystem. So, the oldest person in the world died in Japan last month at 117. Thirteen countries are expected to have super-aged populations by 2020. The definition of that is 1 out of 5 over 65. And these include countries like the US, the UK, Germany, Japan, France, South Korea. And it's predicted that 60% of the world's population over 65 will live in Asia by 2030. Yet, only 16% of executives are doing anything about creating special roles for older workers. And less than half have done nothing to help create sort of new jobs or new careers for their older workforce. This is a huge opportunity. This is a group of people who want to stay in the workplace. Perhaps some of those motivations are around financial and retirement and sort of how they're going to care for themselves, but perhaps a lot of it is also around their interest in contributing. The dialogue is around health span. People are living longer lives, but their preferences are to do so on their terms, flexible, on their own terms, from a warm place. And so, certain companies are actually stepping into this breach. BMW, simply by adding floor mats and adjustable workbenches on a production line of older workers, increased their productivity by 7% in 3 months. Suntory, a Japanese company, decided to shift its retirement age from 60 to 65. And I actually would argue that they're going to have to shift that again up to 70 and possibly more. And Home Depot has long been known for how they attract older workers into their stores and use their knowledge and wisdom of the tools and the materials that's being sold to help create an experience for their customers. And they're doing even more now to create part-time opportunities for more older workers to spend time contributing, again, how they want, where they want, in their way. The hyper-connected workplace. 100 billion things connected, contributing 10 trillion to the GDP by 2025. All in a world of ubiquitous access and 5G capability. The workplace will be hyper-connected, but can we take advantage of it? 71% of the executives we surveyed believe that these tools are actually improving their own personal productivity. And 70% believe that workers are going to spend more and more time on these collaboration platforms, and we're watching the growth of this market. They say it's going to be $60 billion by 2023, and that's notable. But underlying all of that is further connectivity and what can happen around that. And so what we're seeing are organizations stepping into this marketplace. So the Mayo Clinic, one of the world's leading healthcare organizations, created an app called Ask Mayo Expert. And it tags information, it gets you connected to others, it looks at the treatment diagnostics and so forth, research and et cetera. And physicians are using it approximately 10 times a day to interconnect and learn what they need to learn to help serve their population. Dropbox, as you already know, is a platform that enables you to sort of avoid email, and it's increased productivity at Dropbox substantially. And then Starbucks, just a few months after implementing Facebook at Work, 80% of their baristas were using it to share knowledge and information, and it helped create the community that is what you see at Starbucks. And so it's an emerging world. Now remember, earlier stat, 47% of the executives surveyed are not entirely sure if this is going to increase productivity. But if you think about what it has begun to do, driving productivity, driving community, driving collaboration, providing a platform for people to be connected in a world where the nature of proximity is dropping. Imagine a world where you could source your talent anywhere if you add a platform and the kind of connectivity that's being predicted. Physical proximity to sourcing talent is going to become irrelevant. And then lastly, the workforce ecosystem. So 77 million freelancers in Europe, India, and the US. And according to some estimates, the UK, 50% of their population will be working in this economy in the next 5 years. Yet, only 16% of the organizations surveyed are doing anything about having a strategy for dealing with the well-defined workforce, a hybrid workforce of this sort. And so what does that mean? What we're seeing is organizations are starting to explore the gig workforces. They're starting to create sort of hybrid talent models within their shop. Amazon Flex helps get their products to the last mile, right? Target bought Shipt. Shipt is an online buying community. And you all know about IKEA and TaskRabbit. We may never have to put together an IKEA chair again. But Shipt was an interesting one. I was speaking with the HR team there, and what they were telling me is that their traditional workers within Target are all clamoring to migrate over to Shipt. Think about that. The traditional workforce wants to move into the gig model. Why? It's cool, right? Why? They can work on their own terms, from their own pace, from wherever they want, right? And so as you start to bring these models together, it creates interesting dynamics in large organizations that they're exploring. What's also happening is the gig platforms and the gig communities are starting to go uphill or upstream. So we're not seeing the task-based outcomes that you see here. We're also starting to see platforms for higher skilled workers. So think about Upwork, where you can get a CFO or a CMO or a digital strategist to produce an outcome that you need. And so more and more of the opportunity to search for the outcomes you're looking for can be managed through these hybrid talent models, and organizations can source what they need that way. So, as I've noted, only a few organizations have actually cracked the code on how to take advantage of these trends. And the power and the possibility of these trends really matters when they start to come together. Solving for the hyper-connected workplace enables tapping into that unleashed workforce and that ecosystem. It enables you to source talent globally, anywhere, right? These technologies, as they come online, create more and new and different jobs, even as they start to disrupt the jobs that exist. And without question, in the industrial world that's coming of the cyber and the physical, we are talking about the re-engineering of every job. But can we do that in a way that will solve some of what we want to see happen? Can we create that preferred future for what the workplace will look like? Well, unfortunately, this is not the domain of HR, right? It's not the domain of IT. It's not even the domain of procurement or legal or strategy. Actually, in our trend research, what we found is it's going to take a symphonic C-suite. It's going to take the top of the house working together in an agile way to solve this problem in a multidisciplinary fashion in a way that has yet to be done. And some organizations are starting to see that. 85% rate this as important, and over half as very important. Yet, 70% said that it's rare that they actually collaborate in this way. And 54% don't believe their executives are ready for the level of collaboration needed to actually tackle the changes we're talking about in the future of work. Now, on one level, that may seem distressing, but I'm actually more optimistic. So if 85% think that it's really important, and if the power of the individual and the organizations of the future, of today, are starting to step into the breach created by the lag in public policy, and we're recognizing what schools are not yet doing for us, and we're recognizing that those that potentially could be left behind need to be given the nudge to not be left behind and to connect into this vibrant economy that's coming, then I'm more optimistic, given some of the solutions that we're seeing, that organizations are going to step into some of this breach. And so let me leave you with a quote. What we need to do is always lean into the future. When the world changes around you, and when it changes against you, what used to be a tailwind is now a headwind. You need to lean in and figure out what to do. So let me help you lean in. The data is yours. Please scan it and enjoy it. Thank you very much.